All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Serious Angler Podcast, where our main course for you guys will be talking and hopefully teaching you more about bass fishing, but of course, not without a distraction or 10 here and there. Whether you're here to learn or just for hear some bass and banter between a few goons, you're in the right spot. I'm your host, Bailey Eggbrecht, here with the Bassin captain, Mr. Andy Full, and Idaho's finest, Mr. Adam Deacon. Fellas, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Doing
Living
great,
the
man. I don't know
dream,
about
man.
Idaho's finest, but
It's my
certainly
new coin phrase for you because Andy's got the Bassin captain, so I had to give something.
Idaho's
We have to
finest.
change it to the Northwest finest, so he covers that whole
I like
corridor.
Idaho better, man. Idaho's the premier state of the Northwest, so we'll stick with that.
Idaho's favorite hoe, Adam Deacon.
The potato lover, Adam Deacon.
Yeah.
Potato lover.
Same. Idaho's favorite stash. Yeah, here we go.
Love it. Love it.
Back again. So episode 2 of 2025, and we got a pretty big one, which we'll get into a little bit. But let's kind of go around the horn. Obviously, Andy, things are a little bit, I guess, icy, if not miserable conditions wise here in New York. So,
Yeah, it's
is there even a place
gloomy.
to steelhead fish right now?
There's a couple. It's a little tough, but we're the second cloudiest city, basically region in the United States, behind Seattle until the
I was
lake
gonna say,
until the
wow.
lake freezes over, which I think by the end of the middle of next week. Oh, actually, this week, right? Like the middle of this week, it should be frozen. So
Are we really the second most cloudy?
yeah,
I would
Wow.
have never guessed that. I would have said somewhere northwest.
because of the Great
Yeah.
Lakes, it's just constantly produces condensation. Therefore, you
Mm.
constantly have clouds when it gets cold. But yeah, like the lake is going to freeze up this week based on the forecast. It's cold, right? Like
Oh yeah.
teens, -20 wind chills. It's
I think
great.
Sunday to Wednesday, the highest here is like 14 or something like that.
14. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. I think our buddy Forrest was trying to get me to go ice fishing on Monday, and I don't know if I'm gonna do that.
It's a little too
Just for the
cold.
mere fact of how cold it's gonna be, and I'm like, damn, the South has gotten a hold of me because I just look at that weather and I'm like, nope.
Yeah, it's funny. Like all these people are like commenting on my Facebook. There's ice fishing. There's ice fishing. I'm like, I'm not gonna go buy gear to go out one time in the
Mhm.
next 5 years. So like more than that. So I rebutted them like, so how many times have you gone in the last 5 years? And I just hear crickets.
Dude.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
yeah.
exactly what I was telling Forrest because he was trying to get me to go, and I was just like, "Do you have extra rods and extra picks? Because I'm not buying anything to go do it."
So I messaged one of my buddies yesterday and I was like, hey, if you ever have like spare room and spare gear in the hut, I was like, I'll bring the cameras and some beers and we'll have a good time. But I was like, I'm not buying this stuff to go by myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'll gladly join you, like, but I'm not spending money to buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to ice fish a lot in Colorado, and I just have gotten so soft when it comes to ice fishing stuff. Like I kept like a couple of rods and that kind of a thing. And like here in Idaho, we've got a lake. Quite frankly, a lot of our lakes don't freeze because it's low enough elevation or they've got enough moving water. But some of the high elevation places, one of which is like world famous related to giant perch. That's like the only thing I've considered just because I absolutely was a perch hound and chased them this summer with scope and had so much fun that I'm like,
Yeah.
that'd be fun through the ice, but it's like also a lot
It
nicer to
is.
be on a bass boat and, scoping and moving around. So
Right.
anyways,
Yeah.
Can't complain with some nice little Lake Crisco and some perch though. That's hard to do. That is the one nice part is of ice fishing. I guess it's a lot of catch and cook. So
yes.
that is nice, but
And why do fish taste better when the water's cold? Why is that? But I think it's a thing.
It's a blood vessel thing, I'm pretty sure. Like their metabolism is lower, right? So they're converting less energy, so it turns into fat storage as opposed to lean, oily muscle.
Interesting.
that'll be a question
For Steve
uh,
Barton.
for Steve Barton, exactly.
That
So by
would
the time this
that
episode is aired, we would have published our first episode of the Real Biology. If you guys haven't checked that out, it's the most recent one here, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube. But every now bi-weekly, we're gonna have an episode with Stephen Barton, our favorite fisheries biologist. We should ask him that because we have, of course, our fishing nerd that is Andy down here. But we can get it straight from the fisheries biologist, because while Andy's kind of like a mix of being very accurate, especially when it comes to weather, more than the weather man, but also he kind of crosses the line of the tinfoil hat kind of theories.
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah, that's why we love him. It's okay.
Don't judge me.
Don't judge me. Hey, we say it with love, buddy. We say it with love. But dude, Deacon, I guess I mean, really, if we want to call it, I mean, your first pro season is just around the corner, dude.
Yeah, man.
You getting nervous for it?
I am. I'm feeling way behind. I really am. I spent a lot of time
ball, eh?
dropping the 8 ball. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. My boat is actually currently in Jones Marine. So shop here, incredible shop, good guys in the Treasure Valley. They're out of Caldwell, Idaho. But my boat is there now, getting like trailer stuff done. So I'm running the same boat I did last year. There was kind of some debate there on what I was going to do. But all maintenance is getting done. I'm switching over to a Apex at the console rather than Helixes, so I'm fired up for that. And then still working on what the front of my boat's going to look like. But going, really liking these new Humminbird units. Excited to put those to the test. Put the new Quest on as well, rather than having just the Ultras. Figured I'd go with the Quest and see all the updates there. So excited for guys. Same boat with new stuff, right? And so really fired up for all of that, and gonna hit the road here shortly. The first tournament, the first BAM Super 60 isn't until March, but they have a Pro-Am on that same body of water a month earlier. So probably gonna hit that and check the place out, because all these tournaments, 30 days off limits, no practice at the event. You roll in on a Thursday night, tournament starts Friday.
I absolutely love that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Just
no one else is doing that. Like, I'm excited to see what that's like. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the only ones that are really doing it right is like Major League Fishing on those like secret cup, like cup events. Yeah, where they just don't even know where they're going till the morning type deal.
Yeah, and that's a whole other point too. I mean, those cup events. That episode, Real Biology, earlier this week was with Gary Klein, and I told him on that episode, I said those cup events are the greatest thing, I think, in TV for fishing, at least in my opinion. I was like, dude, if you found a way to live stream those, like, that'd be so sick. But like, I think it's, I mean, I can understand like people that like to prepare and, you know, things like that when it goes into an event, be like worrisome with no practice. But I feel like the vast majority, like going in no practice for anybody, that's pretty sick.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it shows the vast understanding of how well they know how to break down a water on the fly
quickly.
Like, you can watch some of those events and be like, oh, these guys are on nothing. And by the third period, somebody or 3 guys are running away with it because they figured it out so quick.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me the way they can adjust on the fly and just
I'm a little worried about, like, I've really learned to practice, right? Fishing like the Toyota series and things of like, okay, I've got my 3 days to break this body of water down, or 2 days, or whatever it is. And so, like, I'm going to have to certainly relearn to think faster, because how many times, I don't know about you guys, have you like found the fish that you end up fishing for during the tournament on like the last day of practice at 4:00? You know what I mean?
Like, I think that's happened to me one time. Otherwise, dude, for whatever reason, it's the first thing I find. It's the first day, like the first mornings. But then the rest of the practice is always wasted for me for whatever reason.
Might as well just call it a day, dude.
Yeah,
go back.
There you go.
Chill at the place.
Yeah, I think I'm relatively the same. Like, I usually figure it out in the first like 4 or 5 hours, and then I'm like, I should just stop, because I just once I like find them, I start looking off the wall stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I ain't finding crap. Like, let me just try to run the same pattern. It just ends up coming into like the same 200-foot area, like 3 or 4.
I wish we could show people our group chat for when Andy's practicing for a tournament, because it's like, oh, we found them, boys, and it's like, you know, the days leading up to a tournament, and then Deacon and I just get pictures of 5-pounder after 5-pounder after 5-pounder. And we're like, dude, stop catching them. And here he's, oh, I caught another one. Oh, yeah, I'm going to stop fishing now. And then we get a picture of a 6-pounder later. And then
like, oh, it's a new spot. I don't know. I don't have, like, I got to make sure they're bass.
Those were bass. Andy, if you catch one or two or three, they're clearly bass. Like, what?
Listen,
Why do we need
when
to
I'm
keep
on Erie
doing
and I
that?
have 2,700 waypoints, I got to catch a couple.
And then the tournament comes. Goes, I don't know where the big ones went.
I don't know
Well,
what
they were
happened. It got tough on me out
Listen,
there.
we had a good tournament season, all right? Like, I called the big one. I was like, I'm either going to catch 23 pounds or a giant bag. I caught 23 pounds with a 7-pounder. What can I do? Like, it happens.
Was it actually a 7-pounder, Andy?
695.
That's what I thought.
It's
Call it
straight
how
up
it is.
Kobe.
It's
Unbelievable.
awesome.
Well, one question I have for you guys is, I know, and we're 15 days into January now, but are you guys New Year's resolution guys at all? What are some of your goals
Hell no.
for 2025?
I'll set goals, but I don't. I hate the whole. I'm not a big New Year's resolution
either.
person. I'm a more of like, I don't care if it's the end of November. Like, if there's a change that needs to be made, let's make it now.
Yeah.
I think I like the idea of New Year's resolutions because it gets people to think that I need to improve. I need to get better.
Yep.
I guess I'm against the New Year's resolution culture that is like, I'm going to go to the gym 2 days and then
Right.
stop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a fact that by the 14th day after New Year's, like 90% of people have already quit on their resolution. Like,
Right.
So it's like, why put a title on it? If you put a title on it, then you're setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion. Like,
I agree with that.
It's just come up with a plan and execute it and take it minute by minute, day by day, right? Like, there's going to be peaks and valleys in everything you do. Most people are like, yeah, that's too hard. They just quit because they made it their only goal for the year. Just take your time.
I will say there was one thing my wife challenged the two of us to do for January, which I gladly accepted, but
Okay.
I've already failed by default technically because one of the it was this list she saw on social media. She goes, "Hey, we should try this." I'm like, "All right," and it was no drinking like alcohol in the month of January, which we're going strong. We're good there.
Nice.
No processed sugar. We're good there. And then it was like no bread, which I did not realize how hard it is to eat without like bread. Like I didn't realize how difficult that actually would be. Like, because I realized I'm a huge wrap guy, and I'm like, oh shoot, I can't really
lettuce
do that.
wraps, baby. Here you go.
It's going to turn to lettuce burgers, lettuce chicken sandwiches. Like, it kind of sucks actually. But
you could get sushi. You could have rice on like that sushi wrap because I think it's vegetable based, so you're good there.
Well, either way, there's a lot of things that contain bread or meals that contain bread, and it's actually a challenging one. But we're good there. We're good. It was the I failed. We had to do like the 10,000 step one, and I'm sitting there on Monday like sick as a dog. I'm like, I'm not getting 10,000 steps. This is not happening. I waved the white flag on this one, but otherwise,
try to get 100 today.
She's going great. Like, she gets like 15,000 steps at work every day, being a PT, and she's always on the move. So she's good there, and she made sure she rubbed it in that she's done and better than I have so far this month.
I love it.
Yeah,
I mean,
competition.
For me, I'm the same way. So I've done a dry January the last 2 years. I'd not this year. Like, I just feel like I haven't been drinking a bunch, so I've been like okay with like having a drink every once in a while. Which is, to your point, like more just like lifestyle rather than a resolution. Yeah. But I do have a goal, and I came up with this from a friend actually in December, of like turning 30 in 2025, December of 2025. So I got a year. But I know, like finishing out the 20 strong. So goal is to be in the best, and I haven't fully defined this yet, but in the best shape of my life going into my 30s, right? So like fitness wise, hitting things pretty hard, eating wise, eating pretty well. And we'll kind of continue with that. But excited for that. And as a part of that, one thing that is worth mentioning too, that will be in our show description here, is my brother is a fitness freak, right? And his podcast,
specimen.
Specimen. Great. Some would say a specimen, right? His podcast is the Iron Summit podcast, and they have actually training programs that are awesome. And I wouldn't say, there probably is some stuff to, like, if you're kind of getting back into weightlifting, or you can tone everything down beginner wise and stuff, but like if you follow it correctly, like definitely stuff that pushes you. And it's definitely kind of gotten me over some hurdles this winter and trying to add some muscle. So check it out below, Sirius 10, but they have a really sweet app that like all your workouts are integrated in. And if you are looking to get better in 2025, something worth at least considering and taking a look at.
Yeah, dude, I'm really hyped about this actually because, I've been proud to say like since the summer, down like almost 30 pounds, which is
Heck yeah.
I'm really, really hyped about that. And like gotten on working out 3-4 times a week and eating right, things like that. But I think one of the things, even my entire life as an athlete, I've always been really good at working out. I'm horrible at how to work out, like writing out a plan, figuring out a direction, things like that. That's why I loved in college, like when we had trainers and things like that could help direct you. Where this is going to be kind of be that, like it's perfect. Where it's like I'll do hit workouts and stuff at home, but like if you looked at like my plan, it makes no sense. It's all over the place. It's like, oh, I'll do this next day. Oh, I'll do that day. And well, this like can actually give me a direction. So if you're like me in that fact, where like you like to work out, you want to be more active, but like you feel like you don't understand what to do when or have a direction, this is a good like I guess regiment way to have that. And so like Deacon said, we'll have that link down below and we'll have a discount code too if you guys want to save some money on it. And they do, as well as like one-on-ones and different things like that can assist you, especially if you're trying to go all in 2025 and kind of take back your life type of deal. And so it's, I would advise it. And we're going to keep pushing that, here going forward. If we're gonna the days of the fast food angler, we're trying to reverse it. Okay, we're trying to be the change. That's right.
Trying to be the change for the industry. 100%.
Right.
I love it.
Oh man, there goes the little Debbie's.
Look. It's okay to enjoy life's treats. Okay,
dude. Here's what I
processed sugar, buddy. It's out of your plan. You can't have it.
Hey, February 1st, but I'm indulging myself.
Give me a box of oatmeal cream pies. I'm all in.
And
that's right,
dude. Here's like a thing that I have learned personally, right? Like I was heavier as a kid and like have leaned out, and then now I've like started to add more muscle. But what I've learned is this is like when you have more in the tank, like muscle wise, you can get away with eating worse. Like that's the best part about this is like your metabolism's burning more. Like I feel like I eat more now than I ever did. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of stuff there, and they've got a lot of great tips. So check it out.
The more you work out, the more calories you burn, the more room you leave yourself to eat certain things. That was nice. The one nice thing I'll say about swimming competitively was you could eat everything under the sun and not gain weight, dude. It would come back after like
too.
Yeah, for sure. And like doubles, I'd be doing we do like 20,000 yards a day type of deal, and it's like it takes a freaking toll on. Like I would smash a pound of pasta, a full pizza to myself. I'd have like venison that day too. Like that was
the town I grew up in. We had this little pizza shop. I forgot. I think it was Sub D. Yeah, Sub Delicious. They had $5 large pizzas, and I think like half the wrestling team would go in like once a week, and everyone would order their own personal $5 large cheese and pep pizza. And we'd just take over the place. Like it's a great marketing ploy, but it was a terrible decision on all of our behalves. It was like once or twice a week pounding our own personal large pizzas. It's great. I miss those days. And then hitting the Chinese buffet like the next day and eating as much as you can. Good times. Good times.
That's awesome. Well,
be young and dumb.
Yeah, well, we're sitting here almost 20 minutes in. We have a really exciting episode today. Obviously, if people clicking on this or listening to it know from the title. But Andy, kick things off for us. What can the folks look forward to today on today's episode?
We kicked it off right, 2025, second episode in. Kicked it off the bang. John Cox finally joins us here on the Serious Angler Network, and we basically dive into all things Florida bass fishing with a little bit of salt on the side, and talk about their quest for the Redfish Cup and how they kind of relate to bass but don't, all at the same time. So a lot of juicy nuggets were dropped in this episode. Literally everything from the spawn to winter to following the bass out in their seasonal movement. So it's a good one.
Yeah, and I'll say too, the one asterisk on that is, so it is obviously John being from Florida, talk a lot of Florida fishing. But if you have any Florida strain bass in your state at all, these fish will act and behave the same. So make sure you can take that out of it. We make sure to make a nod to that as well. But definitely a good one and a long time coming getting old Johnny Cox here on the show. So it was good to always enjoy spending time with him at events. So it's good to finally get him on the show, and it will not be his last appearance, that's for sure. But with that, Adam, what's moving over to you, and what's the buzz been around the industry, man?
Yeah. So today's Business from the Bass Boat segment is brought to you by the Rec Lending Crew. Folks interested in financing a recreational vehicle or a bass boat, specifically related to our audience, go check them out. But more than anything, we're kicking things off. I mean, it is January. It feels like time has flown, but we are here. And looking at the Bassmaster schedule, a lot of media coming out around Bassmaster right now with everything kicking up. We've got, first of all, we'll be starting when this airs, the Harris Chain Tournament College Bassmaster Series kicking off at the Harris Chain today. And then we've had already at this point Lake Havasu, which is really cool to see, the Bassmaster Kayak Tournament. That was this last weekend. And then upcoming, probably one of my favorite series to follow out of everything is the Bassmaster Opens. Obviously, new changes there. We are going to see Clark's Hill kick things off for the 2025 Bassmaster Open Series. Starts January 23rd. So super excited to watch that this weekend. What do you guys think about everything coming up?
I think it's the Bassmaster Ice Fishing Opens of 2025, almost at 24.
I'm curious to see what will happen, like if they get there and if they're launching out of like a cove or something, and it's iced over. Like, what do they do?
You guys get one creek to fish out of all 200 boats.
Good luck.
Yeah, which I think it's what capped at 150 this year, right? Opens.
I believe so.
It's a smaller field.
It's either 150 or 175. Now, to be blatantly honest, I read it and I don't remember. So
yeah, me too.
The rules that were changed were a while back. So yeah, I mean, we kind of didn't really have them up in front of us, but I know that with I think it's
no cap, no co-anglers.
That's the no calling we talked about last week. It's gonna be a lot of big changes for the Opens, obviously with the big division change with only 2 divisions. And
do they have marshals for the Open?
I don't believe so.
So like that, like to me, honestly, this time of year, right? Cold weather, it's kind of dangerous not to have a co-angler or not a marshal. But like if I'm not saying that there's stumps or anything in Clark Hill, but what if you hit a stump and you fall in and the water's 33 degrees, right? And you're not wearing proper flotation device. Like you could have a safety issue on your hands too. So everyone's got to be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah, it's a fair point, man. I mean, like that is the most dangerous time to be on the water anywhere, but got to also remember in all of these, I hate to say it, but 85% or more of Opens, Elite, anybody doesn't really practice with a co-angler anyway, so they're already on the water for 5 days without the tournament.
Yeah. And it's just the way my mind thinks, like, oh, what are the dangers in this situation? I don't like fishing alone in the wintertime just because
it's a real thing, dude.
Talk to.
What?
He just talks because you don't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
You're just talking to soulless air when you're by yourself.
Yeah, probably. No, I can be quiet when I'm on the lake by myself.
I don't know about that. Sometimes. Everybody knows when Andy's at the ramp. We'll say that.
Yeah, just at the ramp.
Even on the lake too. You're a mile away. Hey, Jeff. Hey.
Jeff's my boy. Love that guy.
Love that guy.
Just messing with you, buddy. That's good stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully they aren't breaking through ice or anything like that. I think at the very, very best, they're gonna be fishing in some very cold water temps. Like I'd be surprised if anything's high 30s. If not, it's gonna have to be less.
It's cold, dude. That is not what I look forward to starting the year. I generally would like the idea of going to Florida or somewhere where it's ideally warm.
Yeah, no, I think a local, if they do go, a local is going to have a big advantage in that. And then 2, I would not want to be the tournament director, and it'll be interesting to see if it is, partly frozen over, whatever, how they adjust and reschedule and everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm trying to pull up the weather for Clark's Hill. like I said, and I want to see how cold it's actually going to be. When pull up the 10-day.
It starts what? It's like Thursday to Saturday, right?
Yeah, so Wednesday, so the day this airs, it's going to be the high of 31 with a low of 20.
Not bad.
Yeah. And every
That's-
night's like in the mid to low 20s. And you're going to have big north winds, and it looks like it's probably going to feel like single digits to mid teens.
Ruh-roh.
Burr. That's going to be some
We're gonna have
ice.
a lot
I've seen
of
guys spraying Pam on their guides.
yeah, a lot of buddy heaters in the boats for that event.
No fans this time, just heaters.
Just heaters. Just heaters. But what else around the industry has been going, Deacon?
Man, outside of that, really another thing that I thought was interesting is just and I think they've done this in the past, but the Bassmaster All-American is going to be released as far as the top 8 guys in the country, whether it be via the divisions or team of the year race. They get recognized at the Classic, which I think is a really cool thing. As much as we've all been watching sports, and I generally don't, but I've been paying a lot of attention to the college playoffs this year.
Mhm.
And so, anyways, it's cool to see, not nearly on that scale, but to see All-Americans recognized in bass fishing. I think that's a cool thing for the industry and would be a cool experience if you're a kid that gets to do that and get to go to the Classic, get recognized as being one of the top. I mean, freaking hammers, right? We've seen how good these college kids are coming out and hitting the pro level and being very deadly.
Mm-hmm. Now they just need that NIL money. That's what
we just need some NIL money for the fishermen.
That's right. That's right.
Fisherwomen.
I have a hard enough time getting that in the industry as it is, let alone college.
Hey, it might happen in some of those schools that do scholarships for fishing, right? Like it could be something that's already there and they're not talking about.
Yeah.
Never know.
NAL, you got to be official NCAA sport to dabble into all that stuff. But yeah,
you never know. There's private equity for
There's always a loophole.
Always.
Yeah, that's right.
Just take a small amount of some NIL money from a football program, just like a very small portion, and it would be enough to have a heck of a fishing team.
Yeah, no kidding. You just got to take one of the offensive linemen that's getting paid $750K to go there. You can put a quarter of that into a team, and you're good to go.
You got some boats, some trucks, and you're ready to roll.
Ready to rock. Yep. That's a whole nother conversation. It's pretty stupid what some of these programs are being given each year. Budget-wise. Yeah, we'll avoid that one. But anything else, Deke?
No, man. I think that's what I've got for second show of the year, and be ready to watch Bassmaster.
Heck yeah. Well, folks, I guess without further ado, let's get into today's show with Mr. Johnny Cox. All right. We are here joined by the one and only Mr. John Cox. John, how are we doing, man?
Good. Doing great. How are you guys?
Cold.
No complaints here. Yeah.
Not as cold as you, but cold.
The guy in Florida is in the puffy jacket.
That seems to be the theme of the country right now. It's just cold. Everybody's cold. It seems to be the past few weeks is the storm blowing through. And it's just honestly, can we just take a pause here and just know how this country's just madness right now with the winter storm on the East Coast, the fires on the West Coast, and it's just
right.
Is it just wild to anybody else that doesn't surprise anybody any day when you wake up and it's just something new going on?
I'd say at this point, I'm not surprised at all because it's just the way it's been for like the last 10 years. So like it is what it is.
Yeah. At least for you, John, the one constant is just always nice and warm in Florida.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
There's one thing.
Yeah, but that's only a few months. But
you guys seem at least like we're out by you and Keith. You kind of get the edge of storms, right? You guys don't get hit too hard.
Yeah, we're inside of it a little bit. I mean, we'll like lose power for like or a lot of places around us lose power for like weeks, or a week or so, But we're more inland, so we don't have any like ocean flooding. We just have a lot of like ponds flooding. Like half my neighborhood, this last one, you couldn't even get out because it was completely underwater where the ponds went under or flooded.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not we don't get it like they do on the coast though, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Hmm.
Random question for you, but to kind of kick things off a little bit is with your pond in the backyard that people tout, especially Rob that talk about with the famous pets you have.
Yeah.
Do you notice a big change from them in like behavior like before or after the hurricanes?
Oh yeah, so I don't live over there as much anymore. I Airbnb that place. But
Nice.
man, when
Nice.
I was over there living there every day, it was incredible. Like I could go out, throw a handful of food out, and if the brim came up and the bass came in and started hitting them, I knew wherever I was going fishing that day it was going to be really good. And then compared to like if I threw the food out and like some brim came up, no bass came in, I knew it was gonna not be that good of a fishing day, and it normally played out like that, which is
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
That's
Did you ever
awesome.
get
No
to a
little-
point? Sorry, Bailey, go ahead.
Oh,
You're good.
I was gonna say, did you ever get to a point where you throw the pellets in? You're like, yeah, screw it, I'm not going fishing today.
oh yeah, no, 100%. There was a lot of times where I was like, I was questioning it. It was either cold or whatever it was, and I think really more what it was the fish. The pond has a lot of deep water. It's got like 27 feet out in the middle of it. It's got some brush and stuff I put out because I was gonna like practice fishing deep out there, but I mean I did it some, but it just wasn't for me. But I think what happens is those times where they wouldn't come in on them bluegills, they were just out there feeding out there in that deeper water. And it would be the same thing. A lot of the lakes around here and the river and stuff, the fish would be further out on those days.
Gotcha.
That's crazy. So, yeah, screw all the weather apps and everything. You got your own little
Yeah.
personal fishing barometer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, dude, I would love to hear about how the you and Keith's inaugural redfish season has been going, and kind of the outlook on the rest of that for this year.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, man, when we got into the whole thing, I was thinking, man, redfish, everybody says it's super, similar to bass fishing, and uh, it's a lot. We jumped right into it. We practiced a couple days. Neither me or Keith ever really caught many redfish before, and boy, it was tough. It was a lot different than we expected. Now we only fished one on the Gulf Coast, and now we're going. We got one this weekend out of Jacksonville. So supposedly, in looking on the map and watching videos and stuff, Jacksonville looks more like fishing creeks and like grass, flooded grass, and so like it looks like stuff that might be a little more compared to where we were we were at Punta Gorda, the last one, down below Tampa and
Yeah.
stuff, and it was more like flats, clear water, which I thought was great. It was just the whole thing of getting into some of the spots and getting out before the tide sucked out was like so nerve-wracking. We like, our one spot we found, we got in, we caught one, and then I mean before you know it, we were almost completely surrounded by land, and it was scary. And then so we had to get out of there and stuff, and we didn't really see anymore. But yeah, I'm excited. This week's gonna be, I think it's gonna be more like swim jigging and fish and grass. Might even be able to catch them on frog. So I don't know.
I was gonna ask if you caught one on a general yet.
I that was the plan at the last one. I'm like clear water. I'm throw the general to him. We just didn't really see any. Like I caught some trout on the general, some snook, but I ended up the one I caught. Yeah, it's terrible. I caught two in 3 days, but only one in the tournament. But I caught it on my smallmouth setup, which was just a net head with a Super Trooper crawl on it. And I just saw him swimming, and I threw it out in front of him, and it was reeling it by his head, and he came over and ate it.
No way.
But yeah, and it was, and like, a lot of the guys at the meeting was like, man, you got to have heavy line. They were like using 20-pound leaders and stuff. And I got that one on like a 8-pound leader, on some like 4-pound fire line, and it was like I was chasing around the boat and stuff. But now we got some new pen reels. We got, a little bit heavier line, a little better setup. So maybe maybe this week will go good.
You went
You
into
guys
a
just
play
went-
undergunned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say you probably just took the bass tackle, didn't even swap anything over, and just said, "Screw it, let's go."
Yeah, no, we ordered some stuff from Penn, but it just didn't come in. So we just, I just had some of the smallmouth stuff rigged up, and we brought it. And yeah, you should have seen. There was some of the Keith took the snook one of the days of practice, and that thing, man, it like took all the line. I mean, it stripped off all the line. It jumped like, I mean, it was. Oh, it was fun, but we definitely needed a little bit heavier tackle.
I love it.
That's awesome.
What's been the biggest like surprise or difference? I mean, you mentioned in the beginning just how much different it was than you were anticipating from bass tournaments, but like, what's been the thing that's so far you're like, holy cow, I had no idea that this was
so the biggest one I can think of is that we show up at takeoff in the morning, and I got a brand new ACX 2210 Vexus center console. I mean, it's got 250 on it. It's super nice. It's the nicest boat I've ever owned. And we dump it in, and I'm thinking, man, we're gonna fly by these guys. Like, man, these guys are gonna be in little skiffs, all this stuff. Man, we show up, and they got like 400s. They're in tower boats. There's like ladders ratcheted to the front, and then and me and Keith are looking at it. We're like, man. And we had Rob with us too. Rob was filming or whatever. He was. We brought Rob because we thought Rob would, we'd make some kind of video out of it, and because we were going to catch all these redfish. But since we only really caught one, we didn't really put anything together yet. But but it was, I was shocked. Like the guy, I mean, the guys had, they had really big boats, and man, they were fast, and I guess that was the thing. And I thought, like, as a bass fisherman, I'm like, oh man, we go to places, get up shallow and stuff, and man, not even on the same. We don't even run our boats on the same playing field. These guys all have like tunnels and stuff, and they're running. There was 4 or 5 footers out in the middle of the bay. They were running the shoreline, like it looked like it was maybe like ankle deep water, like the whole way out. Like it was wild, and then and then coming back, like, half, there was probably 5 or 6 of them that were on land, ran aground, with the tide going out. But I mean, those guys, I mean, they will do whatever it takes to get to some of the places.
And there's no like restrictions on equipment. It sounds like
that
motor,
one,
tunnel holes.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to learn that. So what we did, we jumped into 4 of the qualifying tournaments to try to make this championship. Championship pays like $100,000 or something, and but each qualifying one is a different, like, maybe league or group or whatever, and that one didn't have any restrictions. So the next one, which I think, I'm not 100% sure, but the one we're going to in Jacksonville, I think you can only be 22 inches off the front deck.
Okay.
You can't fish from the towers and all that stuff. So yeah, but we'll see. I mean, it might show up. It might be the same thing. I don't know, but it was funny. We got out there, and everybody's up in their towers and they're casting, and everybody's like, on their ladders and stuff. And Keith goes up there with the cooler and sets it up there behind me and standing on it, and he's casting off the cooler. I don't know.
He was close.
He was close. Yeah, he was close.
I love it.
Yeah.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
I saw you rocking the center console for the NPFL event. Is that the boat for the year?
I'm gonna probably use it in some. I got a new one. I have to go get it. They just finished it up the other day. It's pretty much the same boat, but laid out like a bass boat. And that thing, man, that's super nice. I mean, that was a big decision on going over there to Vexus. Was, when I went with Keith, I guess a year or so ago, and I walked in, I saw that hull that the center console's on, and I was like, man, if they made that into a bass boat, that'd be, incredible. It's super wide. You can tell it floats real shallow. It's got a good V on the front to cut through the waves. And yeah, they did. 9 months later, I came in and I was running that boat laid out like a bass boat. So pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to I could talk red fishing all freaking day with you guys. I'm really looking forward to the content that you guys and Rob come together with on that. That's going to be exciting, man. But to kind of get into the conversation of today is Florida strain bass. I feel like if you're not from the state of Florida or grew up learning these fish, it can be rather confusing trying to understand them coming from basically almost any other state to Florida. And I'll note that this kind of applies to, I would say, a lot of any other states or locations that have Florida strain bass.
Mhm.
But I guess just to kind of dumb it down is we want to understand or try to understand seasonal movements of a Florida strain bass, because it can be rather confusing. Whereas other states and locations have different type of geographical makeup of the lakes, depths, things of that nature. So I guess to kick things off, Florida strain bass, is there a way to dumb it down of how to understand them?
Geez, they are by far at times it's almost like at times you'll think they don't even exist, and that's what's I mean even to this day is like something I try to wrap my head around is like you go to a lake, you fish it, whether cold front just went through or the water temp's still dropping, whatever it is, and you'll think there is no fish in that lake. Now it's a little different with the forward facing stuff and all the electronics and stuff. You can still see some of those fish out there in that deeper water. But if you were to go to a lake, without it, it's just like they disappear. It seems like, and I guess a lot of that I've learned is shiner fishing. You're doing guide trips and stuff. You think, oh, you take shiners, you're going to catch them every time. And there's actually times where it just, they will not touch them. There's days they won't touch them. And you can actually, you can feel. I mean, that's kind of what I learned. A lot of it was, doing these guide trips over all the years. And, that shiner would get scared when you get around the fish. So you would know, okay, there's some fish here, and that you would be like, okay, they're gonna, they're there, but I mean, they might not bite for days until something either weather changes, whatever it is, and they're really fickle. I think that's the reason why some people are like, oh man, went to Florida, I had the best days ever, and then or the first couple days, and then or the next day nothing, or got down there and didn't catch anything. It can really be up and down.
Yeah. That's a really good point too. And talking about the live bait, actually recently a good friend of ours here on the show, Caleb Bell, he's a really good guide out of Chickamauga.
Mhm.
He does a lot of that cast netting for gizzard shad and does some of those guide trips for those. And it was crazy. We went out when it was the 8-degree winter blast last week, and these fish would not touch a gizzard shad. He could even see him. He was using. This is where everybody will probably rave and go nuts. Is he was using live scope with live shad. So people will probably lose their mind in the comments there. But it was crazy. They would not touch a live gizzard shad, but as soon as you picked up a single swimmer or something like that, they'd finally eat. It's crazy to see, like when you're talking about temperamental, how those fish can be. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, and those are a lot of those are Florida strain there, so that's probably same thing. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Like yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think something to me that's always been confusing, right? So I live out in Idaho and have never. I fished Florida, I think, when I was 8 years old one time.
Oh wow!
At Disney World or something like that.
Yeah.
And, with the shiner, like 100%, same deal. It was a blast. But I haven't spent any time in that part of the world, and I think that it's such the rest of the country. There's exaggerated movements around the spawn, right? And we have depth contours that are so much bigger, and we have fish working into creeks and all these different things. I mean, how do you, I guess, break down where Florida lacks in that, and how do you break down those different seasons differently than the rest of the country?
Yeah. So the thing with Florida being so flat, for all these years, there was guys that fished offshore and stuff, but for the most part, a lot of us just beat the bank, and we knew back then, the fish, they live out in the middle. Those fish in Florida, they just live and they roam out in that open water. So I think what to try to put it like on a time, like month by month, like Florida, we get like gosh, I'm trying not, my brain is just going nuts because I'm like thinking, man, I got, I'm like thinking of all these like mini spawns we have in fish. But like what I think, I guess what happens is especially when it gets really cold, a lot of these fish are out in the open water. Summertimes they're out in the open. They pretty much live out there a lot with the crappie and stuff. And then especially now Florida's changed a lot. You know, when I was a kid, Florida had a lot more better bottom. You know, inside Kissimmee grass lines. You know, it wasn't. They used to scrape them every 10 years. So then you'd have fresh bottom. You know, and they just don't do it anymore. They don't draw lakes down. They don't clean them up like they used to when I was growing up. So that bottom isn't ideal for a lot of the fish to, you know, come in and spawn or to live up in even, you know, because it's just mucky. So nowadays it seems like, you know, the fish are living out in the middle. There's certain times water temps start warming, and they'll start to come up to either spawn. It's more like they come to the bank for, um, you know, for food or to spawn, you know. So whether it's the forage that's spawning up there, shallow in the weeds, but for the most part, like the fish, they live out, you know, in Florida these days. But which is kind of sad because it's like, man, you used to, you know, you just don't catch them like you used to up on the bank.
What do you think's been the biggest culprit to that change? Do you think it's
I
just
think it's well, you know, before when we would spray, which, you know, they would spray stuff, but then we would draw the lakes down, scrape them every 10 years. It would start the lake completely over again.
Wow.
Now that they don't do that, you know, the spraying's just built up. You know, last time they tried to scrape at Okeechobee, like they drawed it down and like the machines were getting stuck. The bottom was like past the point of being able to, you know, drive those machines and scrape it. And so I think what's happening now is like the fish aren't even, a lot of the fish won't even come in into some of the shallow waters, and they're spawning out more in that open water, you know. And I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking like the last like 10 pounder I caught off the bed, it was like, you know, outside of Kissimmee grass line, you know, in like, you know, 7-8 feet of water. It wasn't even up in the good looking stuff, you know, and he was just way out.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's just changed. It's
Being
changed a
lame.
lot. Yeah, but yeah, it's changing quite a bit.
Now, with it being so cold in Florida, right? Like
Mhm.
compared to average, does that kind of like help kickstart the spawn with like water temps dropping, then they'll rapidly increase?
Yeah. So what I do notice, you know, just because a lot of times we don't get this kind of cold for this long, and kind of like, you know, when I remember it ever being this cold for this long was kind of like when Dean Rojas caught the 40 something pounds at Toho. You know, it was just a long span of cold weather, and it really what it does is it just holds off those fish from coming in. For when it does warm up, you just get this massive wave of them to all come at once. You know, compared to our normal, you know, we're cold, you know, 2 or 3 days, then it warms up, you know, you get a group comes in, you know, it's cold a couple days, you know, warms up, you get a whole nother group. So it really spreads them out like that. So you know, we're probably going to have, you know, a big wave of fish move this year when it finally decides to warm up for sure.
You need to go back to Florida, Bailey. In like
I know I was told when I was down there, they're like, yeah, they're just there, but then they're like,
Yeah.
figures you always miss it by the week or two. But yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
like they're about ready to crash.
Oh yeah. We saw some the other day. We were jumping around some of the ponds in Orlando and stuff, and there was already a lot of beds showing up and some males, you know, really spooky. But you know, it was the same thing. It was that thing where, you know, I was doing a trip with some of my buddies, and we were throwing shiners, and you know, you would get out in front of those beds, and you wouldn't catch anything, you know, and it was like, man, you know, they're there, you know, they got other stuff on their mind, you know.
So from an outsider's perspective, you know, tilapia is the weirdest thing from anybody that hasn't dealt with tilapia in lakes with bass. It'll blow your mind too, especially like if you pick a random lake. Like one of my first times fishing in Florida by myself, didn't even like compute that tilapia would be a factor in these lakes till I saw them glowing on the bank, and I was like, "What in the hell?
Yeah.
Whose goldfish got let out?" Type of deal.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that their beds look very similar to bass. So I guess from your perspective, how can you tell them apart, or is it basically you just got to see them on the bed to tell if it's a bass bed or not?
Yeah, so it's crazy is that, a long time ago, you know, you'd have your bass beds and your tilapia beds. Now that the areas are so shrunk down with that decent bottom, they're like they alternate beds. Like you'll have tilapia usually bed when the water gets a little bit warmer. So you'll have bass making their beds using old tilapia beds, and then the tilapia will come in after the bass, and they'll use the same spot. So they're using a lot of them, but normally if it's a tilapia on the bed, it's going to be more cut out. It's gonna they're a little bit deeper. It's gonna be more of like a giant bluegill bed, the tilapia make. But you just have to watch, later in the year as the year goes on, and we have those super warm weeks, and then it cools down. You get spawners to come in, and they'll actually just take over a tilapia bed. And so
So just run them
it's
right off.
yeah. So it's not it's hard to go by and be like, oh, that's just a tilapia bed, because more than likely a bass is going to spawn sometime during the year in that same spot.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's hard bottom, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's the
do
thing. I
work.
mean, yeah, they're running out of places to do that. So
Yeah.
It sounds like a mismanagement issue with Florida. How these
yeah,
waterways.
I don't. It might be something with the storms too. We're getting a lot like, uh, you know, but I don't know. I mean, hopefully it'll get straightened out or something will change. I have seen a handful of places really turn around. I don't know if they're putting work into them or what they're doing, but um, and seen a couple of lakes really turn around for the better. So we'll see.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, like with these drastic temperature swings that we're dealing with right now, right? Like, how do you kind of track them in their movements from shallow to deep? Like, with the lakes being so flat, is it using your electronics to find them out offshore, or do they relatively stay in like a small little like triangle area that where they'll be? You just have to catch them.
I think now, I mean, I don't know why, but like what's coming to me is like a Toho, like Lake Toho or whatever. And and that's the neat thing. Florida's a little different, from like Harris Chain to Toho to Okeechobee, St. John's River. I mean, you got a lot of there are a lot of differences, but like somewhere like Toho, where you have these main boat lanes going back into spawning areas, now that the spawning areas are a lot smaller, you can find some of these areas that go into those spawning areas, and you can sit, and it'll be almost like when you're in an up north lake where you're sitting in a spot catching them as they're coming in, either off some stumps or whatever. Florida's kind of similar. It'll just be more open, flat, and it'll be, instead of like a foot change or a couple feet change, like Florida could just be the grass growing differently in that area, and that would be like that lane. They would kind of all migrate from that deep water into some of these shallow waters, you know.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, we all know you're the shallow guy. If you could be as shallow as possible, I think you seem like you'd be happiest. Where if you're on the bank, that's where John Cox seems to be at his highest peak. And so with that, I guess for you, something like yourself, are there year round in Florida? Are there winning / large caliber fish on the bank? 365 days a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can find them a lot of times. I mean, definitely the colder weather. Now, if we have warm weather going up to it and it gets cold, there'll still be some up there, because there'll be some that are so like dedicated to, like, they're spawning, they're staying up in there, and they won't leave. But a lot of times, it definitely is tougher when it's really cold, and like when it's really cold, I would back off, and throw like a trap or like a bladed jig or something, but it still, like, I would try to stay in that, like, 3 foot range, 4 foot range. I wouldn't go way out, in the middle and try to search around. But I mean, that's kind of where I kind of struggle sometimes, and it's cooler. But then once the spawn starts going, there's fish up there like crazy, and then pretty much, um, the fishing in Florida seems like it really, not for like your giants come in January, it seems like January, February, that are, sometimes in December. But as it goes on, you get in that March, April, May, the fishing just gets good. Everything's feeding. You got shad spawns going on. You got bluegill spawns going on. You got shell crackers spawning, and it just seems like everything's like alive then, and that's when you can. That's kind of like my favorite time to go. And then as it goes on into the year, it gets tougher, and then like you get into like September on the St. Johns River, and you're like, man, is there any bass left? Did they all die? Like, what happened? Like it's but you can find them shallow. You just have to realize, like I noticed even in all these tournaments where I go across the country everywhere, uh even like we'll go to some of these tournaments, you'll be like, oh man, it's gonna be dominated deep. But you can still catch some shallow. You just gotta realize, I might only catch 5 today, and
Hey, there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with just catching 5 as long as they're
Yeah.
5 right ones.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
I guess, and this is kind of off topic of Florida directly, but something that I've been thinking about in relation to that. I mean, we have all of this offshore movement
Mm.
and going off and scoping and everything else. I mean, do you feel like at some point the tide will shift back to some degree to where more guys are out there doing that, and that a guy can do some serious damage up on the bank, or they're just less pressured, I guess is my point
Yeah.
down the line here.
Yeah. It could, and I think at certain places we'll see that happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is with all the fish live out in the middle. Like there's some fish that live on the bank, but they don't. I don't think they live there all year round. I mean, I've learned that when I had that pond in my backyard, and those fish, like even when it was like the dead of summer, it's 90 something degrees, the water temp, they could only come in and feed for a short period of time, and then they'd go back out deep. It's not that ideal temp for them. So, I mean, the thing with everybody out in the middle is now those fish that would come in and they weren't messed with, now they come in and they've already been caught, they're already line shy. Like, I used to go around a lot and, I'd visually would see fish and cast to them. And now a lot of times, these are like pre spawners, in clear water. Now you throw to them, man. They like, if you don't lay it out there and like, where they don't see the line coming, like they know what's going on now. They see the line and stuff. It's like, you can tell a lot of those fish were caught, throughout the winter and through the pre-spawn and summer. So, but yeah, I mean, there's less people on the bank. I think they're harder to catch now off the bank than they ever been.
That's
I
an
think.
interesting point.
In popular lakes where we fish a lot of tournaments, like your Hartwells, your places we have a lot of tournaments where the bank fish, they're just a lot smarter than than I think they've ever been.
Yeah.
They've been beat up for years with
Mhm.
the Maxon General or Berkeley General.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So speaking on a general, I'm not going to allow you to use it here, but
Okay.
if you had to chase Florida strain bass with any 3 baits and techniques, what would they be besides the general? Because I know that would be your answer.
That's
for all
default.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I would for Florida. I've been throwing the unrigged coal shad a lot. It's just you put a weighted belly weight hook in it, swim bait hook, and like I wasn't even a huge fan of it. Kind of like how you would throw what's the one Gambler makes, a Big Easy and all that. You throw it and you wind it through the grass and stuff. I was never really a big fan of that, and I don't know if it's just because now you cover so much water with it and stuff. But I really like that one. That would probably be one of my number ones. Man, spinnerbait. The Berkeley made a really good. I think Edwin Evers designed a lot of it, but man, they have the best spinnerbait I've ever thrown. That thing, man, I've been going.
Combo you're looking at throwing a spinnerbait.
My favorite in Florida, I definitely like at least have one gold blade, double willow. I've always thrown double willow everywhere we've gone. It doesn't. That's just and I'll either go silver or gold, but it's I think because no one's throwing it anymore, that it's like, man, everywhere I've gone, I've caught like so many more fish on it. Over a bladed jig and. Yeah, that would probably be my second one, and that's all year. I mean, that's pre-spawn, spawning, post-spawn. I mean, that thing catches them the entire year. And then My third one would probably.
We're making you think. I like this.
I know. I'm thinking because I mean,
It's a
take
long
the
list of
general
baits
out.
for John.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would probably have to go to swim jig. Swim jig works great in Florida. You know, and throw it through the weeds and stuff. And I'd be torn between like an Alabama brim color or like a black and blue.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
John, I got a quick question for you. Total off the rails, but
Mhm.
you hear about guys like Polnick and Walters and all them spending hours and hours and hours every night throughout a tournament rigging rods and stuff. How long does it take you to rig your rods for the next day of a tournament or practice?
Sometimes not long. It just depends. Like if I'm set in my head what I'm gonna do, I'm ready in 30 minutes. Maybe an hour.
Yeah,
But
he only needs 4 general rods.
yeah,
Maybe
Yeah.
a frog rod.
yeah. If that's what I'm gonna do, I'm usually ready to go. But sometimes I come from one tournament to the next, and my stuff is just trashed. And then it takes me a little time to get them ready. But for the most part, not too long.
Would you say it's trashed when you have to go from fishing a general to like throwing a fritz side because you had to like learn a fritz side on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it your first time ever throwing the Fritz side? You won on, was it Sam Rayburn or something like that?
Yeah. I actually went to get the boat wrap, and I went fishing with Brad over there on Murray right before I left to go to Rayburn. And
Yeah.
man, I mean, I just never really. I mean, I crankbait some, but I just never. Anytime I did, I was like borrowing one from somebody. Like, hey man, you gotta, can I borrow a crankbait or whatever? And so we went out there, and I caught like 20 something pounds with them on Murray with it. So when I got to Rayburn, I was like, I'm throwing this thing the entire time. Like,
Tuned.
I already knew. I was like, man, this thing. So, and I
Like that
found myself
flashing
throwing
new
it.
flag.
Yeah. I found myself throwing it a lot. Just when fishing's tough. It's kind of like it's a fish catcher. So it's like, man, when you need to get a bite, got to do
Yeah.
something.
It just makes them
Yeah.
react, I feel like, too, right? I mean, it's just something that, like, when it's tough, you seem to always get bites on crankbait.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely we've heard Keith echo that too. Especially even the summer throwing the Fritz side, where I feel like the Fritz side being a flat side, they you attribute that to more colder water, but it
Right.
seems like year round, that thing can get bit. And I guess
Mhm.
too, I love to hear if you're throwing the silent one or that new clicking one that came out last year.
I throw both of them a lot. Sometimes I mix it up. If the water's really dirty, I like the clicking one. Or if it's like if I'm throwing it more around grass or kind of like where I guess so. I was at Toledo Bend, and I was throwing it, and it was like this stuff that was growing up off the bottom, and I think they were having a hard time finding it because it was kind of weedy, and I was working it through it. And the clicking one was just it was night and day throwing that over the silent. But I've had it too where I get them slapping the clicking one. So a lot of times it's more clear water. I'm not really working it. I'm working it more in the open, and I'm not really running it into anything. Where I have to take the clicking one off, go to the silent, and then they'll actually take it a little better because
Wow.
a little surprise them a little more.
Man.
Yeah.
Now, as far as, okay, we're talking crankbaits here, and we've seen certainly in the last little while crankbaits playing a factor in Florida tournaments, right? In live fishing in general to some degree. Do you find yourself cranking it all in Florida?
I don't probably as much as I should, just because I'm so like, got 20 something 30 years fishing here. So like I just Florida gets me because I always think of how Florida was, and I'm always like, I'm gonna check this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna fish up here, but it probably would be a good call to try to incorporate that Fritz side down here for sure.
Well, I guess when things get tough in Florida, right? Because
Mhm.
Florida seems really, really just incredible fishing or
Mhm.
really hard. I mean, what are some ways that you can kind of backtrack and get some bites?
I mean, my favorite when it's just completely tough and you can't get anything, and I'm not throwing the general. you have to get something that's going to make them react. It's like, that's the whole thing. To go back on the shiner fishing, shiners will run and dart and run away from these fish.
Okay.
But you need something quick. You need something that's going to fall in their face and get them to accidentally bite it, in those really tough situations. So, I mean, you're pretty much, then you're looking at, a 1 ounce weight when you're flipping, that's where that bigger weight goes in that you want to drop in. And it doesn't even have to be in the heaviest cover. A lot of people think, 1 ounce weight, you need to be in the thick stuff. And a lot of times just that fast fall,
Mm.
even some of the thinner stuff triggers the bites, when they don't want to bite. And we just shot them the other day. I can talk about them now, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. But we got new max scent crawls coming. So like
Ooh.
they are, man, so now you got where you can put something on there, you can flip it in, it can fall in there fast, and as soon as they taste it, and then they're gonna swallow it then. So it's I'm really excited about them. And I guess that would be one. And then the second one would be trap style, and not just winding it. You want, so like we have this new jack that they made for walleye. As soon as I saw it, I was like, man, this is going to be perfect for yo-yoing it off the bottom. And that's what it is. It's like, the 3/4 like the size of a half. So you just throw it out and you let it, it'll hit the bottom like a rock, and then you just, snap it up. And that's, when you're working it through the fish or popping it through them and it falls down in front of them, they'll just, nip at it, and you'll catch a lot of fish. That's actually when they weren't eating the shiners the other day. I pulled that out and caught 5 or 6 because they just, it would just fall in their face, and they would just barely, you feel like a tick, and then, and you get them. So it was just that bait's really impressed me. I looked at it, I was like, man, that's gonna be cool. It's nice and thin, and but the more I throw it, I'm like, man, this thing. And then I saw Lucas the other day at Gunnersville. He caught like what do you catch, like a 7-8 pounder on it or something.
Yeah.
Like it's another. I think it's going to be up there with the Fritz side, like as a fish catcher.
Wow.
Yeah, he was yo-yoing that one too. That jack is interesting. I haven't tried it yet, but from what I've been described, it's almost like a hybrid of a trap and a blade bait.
Oh
It's
yeah,
kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting. Super thin.
Yeah, I
How
just
heavy do they make them?
make them all the way to 1 ounce.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that might be fun to throw on Erie.
Yeah. So yeah. They would crush that
at
thing.
all.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's
Dude, that's freaking sick.
Go ahead,
Go
Bailey.
ahead, Deacon.
I was just going to say that the last kind of thing that I've always intrigued me about Florida, I mean, just especially being, again, a armchair quarterback watching all of this from across the country, always the tournaments are always early in the year, right?
Yeah.
When is the most underrated time to fish Florida that no one talks about?
I guess like going South Florida, like if we were like Okeechobee and like headwaters and all that, you're like November, December can get really good. That it happens down there a lot quicker.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll even start bedding there in November and stuff. But all around Florida in a whole, like that May, like we had those those later in the year. I think one time we had a Bass Pro Tour on Harris Chain. It was pretty late. I don't really remember it because we drove through the night and I just showed up and I didn't practice or anything. And I just went out there and like first cast was like a 7-pounder. But that was like that month of May, they're like feeding then. So and I think a lot of the lakes really clear out in May. You don't, a lot of fishing's really good, working your way up the state. So um, or up the country. But I don't. If you ever want to come to Florida and catch big ones, they won't be as heavy, but man, you'll catch some giant ones with some big heads in May.
That's awesome.
It's like that period when they're getting off the bed where they're just angry at everything that moves in front of their face.
Just feeding, everything. You still got like some really late spawners happening. You got bluegills spawning. You got shats. You got like the whole mess of everything happening at the same time. And it's just, frog fishing, throwing that under coal shad. It's just swim jig, top water. They pretty much do whatever you want and catch them.
That's awesome. Well, John, dude, seriously appreciate you taking time out to hop on here with us and go through all this, because like literally I think for people that may not have fished for Florida strain bass before, it can be, like we talked about, either hot and heavy, or it could be some of the most frustrating things to fish for, because they can be extremely negative in situations where northern bass might not be affected. If that makes sense. So it's one to, while we definitely, the focal point was Florida here, any state that has Florida strains, like we talked about, Deacon, some of the ones on I think Delta's got Florida strains, like this can resonate to any fishery that has them. So
yeah, they're mixed there.
Yeah, so appreciate you hopping on here, John, with that. And I guess, guys, do you got anything else for John here before we hit him with the last question?
No, just good luck at the Redfish tournaments. And
yeah, I'm fired up to watch some of that, man.
Thanks. Yeah, we're all we have to do. We have to finish in the top 40% of any of them, and we'll get to go to that championship thing. I think that's how I read it, but
where's
the
championship at?
Louisiana. And the guys that have told me about it, they said it's like unreal. They're like, it's like you have to catch like, two 8.5 pounders, and then like a high 7, 2 high 7s don't even get you anywhere near it. And he said 50 fish a day. They said it's unreal. No,
jeez, that doesn't sound like it's fun at all.
Nah, and I think they're in Hydrilla too, so it's in, it'll be.
Oh man,
yeah. So it'll be fun.
Punching.
You guys are just drooling getting over there.
I know. That's what I'm like, man. I would love to get over there. I honestly think this weekend's going to be kind of more like fishing that grass, and so I'm excited to get out there tomorrow.
That's sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, like Deacon said, looking forward to seeing what comes of that with the content side. But man, to wrap things up, I guess I don't believe we've actually asked you this question before, and that is, if you could invite 3 different individuals to sit down, have a steak, have a beer, and pick their brain, who would they be? And we'll add to that saying that they don't have to be fishing industry. They could be anybody in this world. They could be alive 1,000 years ago, alive today, doesn't matter. Which 3 would you invite?
Oh, geez. Man, I'm probably just going to take you guys right now.
That's all.
That's an honor.
Brownie points.
Yeah. Points. Oh, God. Geez, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, so I started, this is off top, but I started rooming with Fritz and Biffle for the MPFLs. And I mean, just any of them old timers. I love to hear where it all started and stuff like that. I mean, I'd probably, if I had picked 3, I would probably do Forrest Wood. I'd have him and then probably Rick Clun and just any of them, any of the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the coolest thing so when I first stayed with Fritz and Biffle, I went on YouTube, and when we started looking up old tournaments, and man, it was just like, we were watching these tournaments where Fritz would be like, "Hey, put this one on. I won this one." I put it on, and then it was like him and Biffle neck and neck, first and second through it. So it was just, it was crazy to sit there with them guys and watch them,
when they were
reliving the past.
Yeah. And they remember it like, Biffle was like, "Oh, watch this. I'm going to yank this 5-pounder out of this log here," and I'm like, man, it's just,
they start shit talking each other too during it.
No. They were just, it was cool. But now we kind of burned through all them. Now they just watch Gunsmoke with my father-in-law.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, John, dude, thank you so much for the time, man. It's much appreciated, and we'll drop all social links to you you and your platforms down below, and we'll be looking forward for that Redfish content, man. We'll have to reshare that when that comes out.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
See you.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the new and improved Serious Angler here in 2025, and hopefully enjoyed the episode here with Mr. John Cox. Thank you again for him for joining us. But if you guys are enjoying the whole new look and feel here at Serious Angler with updated segments, things of that nature, please let us know. Send us a DM on social, send us an email, comment down below, especially if you're watching here on YouTube. If you're listening, please leave us a rating, review. Tell us how you're liking the show. We got some pretty big episodes coming up. Specifically, next week, we're going to be joined by Justin Hamner. We got many more planned for the weeks coming here to round out January as well as get the rest of 2025 started here. We're pretty proud to welcome some new show partners to the helm for Serious Angler in 2025 as well. You guys can find all of the links as well as the discount codes to save you some money on the brands we work with on every episode down in the show description. So simply click down there, go check them out. Tell them the folks here at Serious Angler sent you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, and we'll see you on the next one.